Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe Origins Castle Grayskull Playset. That is right, my friends. You can't have a Masters of the Universe toy line without the thing for which He-Man and Skeletor are fighting over, Castle Grayskull, the iconic playset of the Masters of the Universe toy lines. So this is pretty exciting. We got ourselves a brand new Castle Grayskull, and I'm really excited to dive in and show it off for you guys here today. But the best place to start, like always, is with the amazing box art. So Castle Grayskull comes in this large box, and just like we've seen across the entirety of the Origins line, the box art is amazing. Now, the box art is such a piece of Masters of the Universe history. The original line had such amazing box art that helped tell the story, and it's what drew us in as kids. So I love seeing that tradition being continued here, and Castle Grayskull's box art is no exception. I have to give a massive shout out to every one of the artists who are involved in bringing this amazing artwork to life. People like Axel Jimenez and Fetch Francisco and everybody else who's working on this, because this is amazing. I just absolutely love this beautiful scene here. I love the colors that are used in it. I love picking out all the different things that are happening, with one of my favorite parts definitely being that spot where Evelyn is like raising dead warriors out of the ground. I mean, come on, how cool is that? And it's also very reminiscent of what we saw on the vintage Castle Grayskull. Now, I wish I had an actual vintage Castle Grayskull box to show these side by side, but I will at least put the artwork up and kind of show it against this just so you can see what I'm talking about. This one is definitely brighter in colors. The other one is a little more darker, but still, I think the similarities are there, and I think this box art is absolutely beautiful, and I can see so many people just wanting to hold on to this just for the amazing artwork. So when we get our Castle Grayskull pulled out of the box, this is our fully completed playset. Now, it is worth mentioning that there is some minor assembly required. It's not too terrible, and I actually did a live stream unboxing and assembly video, so I'll make sure I link to that in case you guys want to see how the entire thing is put together. But there are a few things that I want to mention here. Specifically are the stickers. There's a small sheet of stickers that is included, and you have to do things like put the sticker on the chair that's on the inside, as well as the sticker on the dungeon grate. There's not a ton of them, but I will say that the stickers are a little thin and they're easy to tear. I had a mishap on mine where I tore my dungeon grate sticker just while I was peeling it off the sheet. And maybe that was on me for not being too careful, but I have had a lot of people respond to that saying that their Dungeon Grate sticker also ripped, so I just want to warn you guys to take your time with it. It does seem like that sticker specifically is very easy to rip when you're peeling it off of the sticker sheet. You want to make sure that it's nice and clean and straight when you put it inside the playset there. Aside from the stickers, there's a few things you need to snap in place on the inside, but for the most part, this thing was very easy to put together, and this is our final product. Now, I will go ahead and bring in the tape measure here to show you guys that this stands right around 19 inches or so from bottom to top. And all the way across, let's see, at the widest point, we're talking about 13 inches or so. I will say that the proportions are very similar to the vintage Castle Grayskull. In fact, there's going to be a lot of comparisons to that original playset, so we're going to get more into that in just a little bit here. First of all, let's focus on what we've got going on with this brand new playset. So the colors on this are a very bright green, I will say that. Now, I will say that in hand, I like the colors a lot more than what I initially saw in the press photos. I didn't really like the way it looked in those. It's definitely different here, but it's also the brightest of all the Castle Grayskulls, and you'll definitely see that when we get to a comparison time later on. It is done very similar to the original, in which the playset itself is just molded in this bright green plastic, and then there's a little bit of airbrushing going on with some lighter green kind of brushed over there, and then some black airbrushed into the eye sockets and the nose socket on the front. The only added paint deco on this that you're really going to see is with the door on the Jawbridge. So on the vintage playset, that of course was just the same color green as the rest of the plastic. Here we get a brown door since it is made of wood, and then they also painted some silver details on there. I like the green door on the original, but it's not like this is new by any means. They've been putting brown Jawbridge doors on there basically since the 2002 version of Castle Grayskull, and I know a lot of people do like that, so I think it's totally cool that we got that extra added detail. And when I rotate this around to the back side, again, the back of this playset really mimics the look of the vintage playset, but they did add on this brown paint on the roof pieces, which is something that's new. Now you can tell that they kind of did that spray technique with this as well, because you'll notice that there is green at the bottom. It doesn't go all the way down to the bottom, but I think they did that on purpose. Like, they definitely wanted to give it that vintage feel, so it's not like a clean, straight paint job. It's definitely just kind of airbrushed on there. Now we've got nice little details like the laser cannon and the flag up here at the top, so we'll talk about those more as we open up the castle here. So I do want to go ahead and just jump to the inside. When I come over here to the side, you'll see that we do have the nice little hooks that snap the entire playset closed, and I like that quite a bit. These are very similar to the ones that we recently saw on the Masters of the Universe Classics Castle Grayskull, but I like this because they lock on nice and tight, and it holds the whole castle together. And I guess this is a good place to also mention the weight on this thing. One thing that really stands out to me is that this is the lightest Castle Grayskull playset that has ever been made. And it's hard to explain it without saying it like this, and I think you guys will know what I mean. If you've had any modern toys that are like bigger toy vehicles or playsets, that kind of lighter, more hollow feeling plastic that's used in modern toys, that's exactly what this is made of. And as a result, this thing is super lightweight. Now, the plus side is totally going to be easy for kids to carry around, which makes sense because it still has the handle on the back. The vintage one was made in such a way that it was supposed to double as a carry case for your toys. That's why it's got the handle up there. So I think this is going to be very easy for kids to carry around. And I will say that I don't feel like it's not sturdy. Like, it feels durable, but I did notice that there are places where the plastic does kind of flex and bend a lot more than what we saw on previous versions of the castle, where the plastic is much more rigid and definitely a lot heavier. So that is one thing that I definitely wanted to point out. The other thing I forgot to mention, in the early press photos, it almost looked like it had like this sparkles, like sparkly deco on it, like there was sparkles or something. And that's not here, but there is like little white dots all around. It almost looks like they just kind of like splattered paint on there, like little white paint dots, and I'm not sure exactly what that's supposed to do, like if it's supposed to make it have like a magical look to it. It's very light. It's hardly noticeable unless you're really, really looking for it. All right, so over here on these hooks, you can see we can pop those hooks open, and then the playset folds open just like that vintage playset. And you'll also notice that a lot of the things on the inside here are very reminiscent to that original playset. Now, there are some things in here that are a bit of an upgrade from the vintage playset. For example, you can see that we've got the big computer over here with like the big screen showing the planets and everything, as well as the smaller computer unit over here on the other side. In the original playset, those were merely cardboard cutouts. So it's kind of nice having these fully sculpted plastic bits actually stuck to the wall in there. Now, there's not a ton of paint deco on there. They're mostly just molded in that gray plastic, and we've got stickers and a little bit of colors to highlight it. But still, it's pretty cool that it's a physical piece this time instead of just being cardboard like on the original. Another place that's pretty cool is with these little banners. Again, the banners were just stickers in the original playset. Now these are actual ribbon with printed designs on there. And it's really cool the way they like fold up for when you close the castle and they just kind of fall back down. So we got these nice little ribbons that are hanging there. A lot of the other details are very similar to the vintage. You'll notice that we still have the 2 floors here. They did add what they're calling a 3rd level, but basically that's just because we have, all these pieces up here in the towers. But there are foot pegs up there for figures to stand. And one of the things that I really like is that they extended the stand up here in the tower behind the laser cannon, and they added foot pegs. So now figures can actually stand up there behind the laser cannon and use it. In the vintage playset, there was no room to stand a figure behind it. So if they held onto the cannon, their feet were always dangling. So that is a really nice touch that they extended that outwards so that a figure could actually stand up there. The flag and the laser cannon both attach via pegs up here at the top, which is really nice. So that way they lock into place nice and sturdy there. And then we've also got the elevator over here on the right side next to me, just like in the vintage. It works even identical. You've got like the little gargoyle there. It is made of a very gummy, soft plastic this time instead of the more rigid of the vintage, but it does have a nice sturdy rope in there, unlike the string in the vintage one that breaks a lot. But it works exactly the same, where you can pull the rope, and the elevator does lock in place when it comes up to this floor, which is something that's very nice. You don't have to worry about it falling back down. There's a foot peg on there, so you can stand a figure on there. You can pull the string. He can ride the elevator up, give it a little press there to unlock it, and then you can send it back down towards the bottom floor. So works just like on the vintage. And then, of course, over here, this is where that sticker is for the Dungeon Grate. Of course, one of the most iconic things from the vintage playset. Yes, it is a sticker, just like on the vintage. So unfortunately, we still don't have like a sculpted Dungeon Grate. Something I feel like we've been asking for as fans for a long time. We didn't even get it in Classics. It was a sticker for that one too. It is a little different. It's not the exact same as the vintage. It definitely pays homage to that, but it is different. Little different creatures in there and everything. So that's going to bring us right up above it, where we have that little trap door with the carpet sticker on it and the throne. Now this works exactly like on the vintage Castle Grayskull. If we reach in and we turn the throne towards the rug drops out from underneath any of your unsuspecting figures and drops them down so they land right on top of that Dungeon Grade sticker. It works really well. Again, it's a feature that was in the original one. It's iconic to Castle Grayskull. It works very well on this, and why change something that is a fun feature and isn't broken, right? So then the last accessory that we get is this nice wooden ladder, which I will say is a nice sturdy ladder, especially compared to the vintage one. And one of the things I really like too is that they put these little notches on the floorboards here. So you got one right up here by the throne, so you can attach it here. But you also have little slots on this side as well as notches over here, so you can add the ladder here as well. Now you only have one. It would be kind of cool if we had two, so we can actually have two different ladders in there. But still, I really like that they gave us somewhere specific to attach the ladder this time around. I thought that was really, really nice. We do get the little training device. This is, again, straight out of the vintage playset. I will say they made this one a little nicer, because this one's got a full 3D sculpted boar head on one end and a giant fist on the other. Still a very strange training device, but it actually has a little bit more weight to it than the original one, and it still spins just fine. We also get two weapons racks. Now, the weapons rack is also an iconic part of the vintage Castle Grayskull playset. This new one is a lot smaller, both height-wise and width-wise from the vintage one, and it does include a lot less accessories. But we do still get some accessories. Like we get the halberd from like Scareglow, but it's done in the gray color. We get the sword and the club and the blaster, all done in a gray color, very similar to the vintage. And then we get a second weapons rack, and this is another place that's pretty cool because this was, again, just a piece of cardboard in the original Castle Grayskull. So now we've got a full 3D piece that we can store any weapons on that we want to. It doesn't come with any extra ones for that, but you can use that to put whatever weapons you have from any of your Origins figures. Now, like the castle itself, I will say a lot of these accessories still feel very lightweight. They are all hollowed out, so, all of these little weapons racks are hollowed out. They're very lightweight. The chair feels very lightweight. The laser cannon feels very lightweight. It just has that very modern toy feel. And I really hope that that's coming across. Hopefully you guys know what I mean. It's a very different feeling from the vintage Castle Grayskull that I'm comparing it to, because all that stuff was so rigid, and this stuff has that flexibility to it and is a lot more lightweight. So it's just something I want to make sure you guys are aware of. So the flag, of course, works very similar to the original. One of the things I like that instead of just having a sticker that you have to fold around to make the flag, you actually do stick a sticker to a piece of plastic. And just like on the vintage, it's double-sided. And, you know, the whole idea on the original toy was whoever was in control of Castle Grayskull at the time, that's what side flag you put up. You know, good guys or bad guys. So kind of maintains that fun little play feature there as well. And that's going to do it for your accessories, which means we've omitted one major Castle Grayskull accessory, and it's definitely something I want to talk about, because the original castle had this other cardboard cutout, which is one of the most iconic pieces inside the original Castle Grayskull, and that is the robotic spacesuit. This is one of those things that just always was so cool and like really had us wondering what was going on with it when we looked at it as kids, and it's really sad to see that completely omitted from this version of Castle Grayskull. I would have loved to see if they handled it similar to Masters of the Universe Classics and gave us like an actual 3D piece to put in there. But I don't know, maybe there are plans to make it as a figure at some point. I think that's the best possible scenario, because I really hate seeing that thing omitted from Castle Grayskull. I feel like it's a big piece of the whole iconic look that's totally lacking. So there's one more feature that I have to show you guys, and while I'm doing that, I do want to show you that just like on the vintage, the whole idea here is that you should be able to put all of this stuff inside the castle as you close it up. You just got to find the right way to store it all in there so that it doesn't block anything, and then look at that. We can just clip it closed. I do love how solid that holds it together, and now everything is perfectly stored inside. But the last thing we have to talk about is the Jawbridge. And I saved this for the end because I wanted to really show you guys this feature. So the idea here, just like on the vintage, is that you have to use the power sword in order to gain access to Castle Grayskull. This is something that comes from those original mini comics where there were two halves of the power sword, and the whole point was to get both halves, because then that sword is the key to gain access to the castle. The only way you can open the Jawbridge on this toy is with the castle. It latches shut, and there's a little slot, like a keyhole right in the door, that you have to stick the sword in, or I guess really anything that would fit in there, and that's what's going to open up your Jawbridge. So let me just show you guys real quick. I've got He-Man here. I've got his half of the power sword, and I want to show you guys that it does work with the half sword. If you just stick the sword through the slot there and give kind of a little press on the side, there's a little button basically in the slot, and it pops the Jawbridge open. I love the details on the inside. I feel like the teeth are so much more pronounced on this than they were on the vintage, and I love that. Also, it's worth noting that it's green on the inside, so very cool. I kind of like that. But you'll notice that once it's open, when I close it, do you hear how it just latches back shut? So you can't open it without having the sword to actually do it. And I want to show you guys, because we do want to combine both halves. If we got He-Man's and Skeletor's combined, it fits through the slot just fine. So that way you could still open this up. However, I did notice that I was leaving little kind of dings on the swords. So that might be something that if you're worried about your weapons getting scuffed up, you might want to be careful with that. For kids, you don't care. That's a really cool action feature, and it works really well. But I just thought it was very interesting to note that unlike on the original, the original, there was a little thing that you can unlock it or lock it, and we can still just open and close the Jawbridge even without the sword. This one, you gotta have the sword in order to get it opened up. So we're going to start talking about figures with the castle, but I don't want to do that before we talk about the included bonus action figure, which is the Sorceress. Now, this version of the Sorceress is all white instead of a more common orange and blue costume from the Filmation cartoon. So this all white one is what the fans refer to as the Temple of Darkness Sorceress, because this is how her costume looked in the original Temple of Darkness mini comic. I can imagine that the reason Mattel included this version with the castle is because they plan a single carded release for the more iconic look down the road. That would only make sense to me, especially since we're already starting to see variations here. So that's probably why we got this here. But still, this is our first Sorceress figure in the line. The overall look is very similar to the vintage figure. I mean, just looking at her face and everything, you can tell that the vintage figure was the inspiration for this. She functions just like we've seen with figures like Teela and Evil Lan and She-Ra. In fact, she still has the interchangeability, so you can still pop the arms out of socket, you can pop the head off the ball joint, you can pop the waist apart, so mixing and matching is possible if that's something you want to do with her here. The biggest thing with her that's different is her wings, her iconic wings. So the wings are made of a softer plastic, especially the tail. The tail itself is like a really, really gummy plastic. And my original thought on that was so that she could sit down, but we're going to come back to that. The actual wings themselves aren't as gummy as the tail piece, and the way they work on this is they just articulate. So you can just fold the wings upwards, they kind of clip in place so that you can open up the wings wide, and that actually works out really well. That way, you know, the vintage one was very action feature heavy where the wings popped out and everything. I think this actually works out very well on this figure. So that way you can pose her with the wings out or the wings down. It doesn't get in the way of her arm articulation. There's no big ol' ugly drums for the articulation points on the back like classics. This is probably one of the better sorceress wings we've seen so far. Now, I want to come back to that whole seated thing because I kind of hypothesized at first that the reason the tail was made of a very soft gummy plastic was so that she could sit in the throne inside Castle Grayskull, and she can't. Her wings still get in the way. She's kind of hovering above the chair, and there's really no way we can get her seated in that throne all the way. So unfortunately, we still have that age-old problem of the sorceress still not being able to sit on the throne. But hey, a lot of you probably want to use that for Zodak anyway, and of course we can get Zodak sitting in that chair, so I guess problem solved for people that want to use it for Zodak. So throughout the video, you've seen various shots of the figures like inside the castle and how they fit. Again, the best thing I could do is relay that to the way they scaled with the vintage Castle Grayskull. It is very similar. Obviously, this by no means is a perfectly to-scale castle to these 5.5-inch action figures. But one thing I wanted to show you with the outside is, again, with that Jawbridge area. So I got He-Man and Battle Cat out here. Let me open up the Jawbridge. So, you know, if we get a nice iconic pose with He-Man standing in front of Castle Grayskull, when he is standing on the Jawbridge door, you can see that he basically comes all the way up to those teeth almost. But he fits through the door just fine. So if you want entry for your figures, there's plenty of head clearance there. But one of the things that I want to check that I know fans always want to know about, they're always curious, can Battle Cat fit through there with He-Man? And the answer is absolutely not. He stands way too tall. And you know, this new Origins Battle Cat even stands a lot taller than the original vintage Battle Cat. But you can see that there's no way that that can happen. Even with He-Man not on there, Battle Cat's armor is even too tall to get him to fit through that Jawbridge door entryway. So just something that I wanted to point out with there because I know folks want to see that. And people are always curious about scale, so I'm going to go ahead and show a little right now of various scaled Masters of the Universe action figures standing with this brand new Origins Castle Grayskull. While we're talking about compatibility, this is something really cool that I wanted to show you guys that we discovered during the live unboxing stream, because this was asked about. This is the vintage Talon Fighter and Point Dread. If we remove the flag from Origins Castle Grayskull, we can actually take the vintage Point Dread and we can fix it to this top tower. Now, I will say it is not a perfect fit. This is a little bit wider, so the size isn't the same as like the vintage one, but I will say that it does sit up here. You just got to find the right way to do it. Look at that. It actually does clip on. That actually clips on the lip of this pretty solidly there. Colors don't match up, of course, but hey, if you have a vintage Point Dread and Talon Fighter, it's a pretty neat little compatibility thing. You can actually put that on the current Castle Grayskull. Like I said, it's not a perfect fit, so I don't think that this was like by design. I think this is a happy accident. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to do a new Talon Fighter for Origins anyway, maybe. But still, this is fun, and I wanted to show that off. All right, guys, it's comparison time. I mentioned that I really wanted to do some serious focus on comparing this new Origins Castle Grayskull to the vintage 1982 release. One of the things that a lot of people were surprised by when I showed these side by side in my unboxing stream was how different they looked. Because I think a lot of people looked at this new one and were just assuming that it was exactly identical to the vintage. And as you can see, when they're side by side, they are not identical. They are similar. And the scale is basically the same, but there are a lot of differences between even the designs of the two castles. So when I put these side by side, I do want to point some of that out, and I will note that I'm perfectly understanding of the fact that I might be very nostalgic for the original Castle Grayskull when I say some of this, and you don't have to agree with me on a lot of it. But one of the things I want to point out is the overall design of the two castles. One of the things that I love about the original Castle Grayskull is just how much more organic the entire sculpt looks on that thing. The new one here looks really cool, and it looks like Castle Grayskull, and I don't want to say anything bad about like the current design or anything like that, but it's so symmetrical. It's so perfect looking. And when you look at the original one, it's not, like one side's a little bigger than the other side. You got the right cheek protruding out a little bit more than the left cheek. The entire thing just looks a little more organic and a little more natural, like this very mysterious, like almost rock formation that became this mysterious fortress of power, and I don't know. When you stand them side by side, I think that really stands out to me. Maybe you don't agree with that. The other thing you can really see the difference in is the colors. Now, I talked about how the new one is like the brightest Castle Grayskull we've ever had. You could really see that looking at these two side by side. The other one is a much more dark green than this new one, which almost has a bit of a day glow look to it. Like that's how bright the new one is. I want to put these side by side, front and back. That way you can see the differences and the similarities between the two. And the other thing I'm going to do is open them up so you can see the insides. Again, you could tell that they used that original playset for reference on the new one, and I think that's awesome because it's such a great, iconic playset. And you can see some of the areas where they decided to update things and change things a little bit, but there's still some things that I feel like are a little bit lacking. I kind of missed the spacesuit that I already talked about. The original weapons rack was so much bigger and had so many more weapons on it, so that's another thing I want to show in a comparison, but I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm being too negative because that's not the way I intend it. I just think it's very important, since this is like an updated version of that original playset, to really show you guys what these two look like side by side so you know how different they are from one another. All right, let's move along with some other comparison times. Let's put it next to the 2000X Castle Grayskull. This one came out around 2002 or 2003. That toy looked a lot different, so it's always interesting to see what these look like side by side. And then we have to do it. We have to show it next to the massive Masters of the Universe Classics Castle Grayskull, which just came out within the last, 6 years or so? Oh gosh, 10 years? I don't know. But it's the most recent Castle Grayskull before this one. But that one was also a lot more expensive. It was sold online direct to consumers. So there's definitely going to be a lot of differences between the deco and everything between those. But always interesting to look at the size difference there as well. So there you go, my friends. There is a look at the Masters of the Universe Origins Castle Grayskull playset. So this is actually set to be shipped in the US in April. It hit shelves already up in Canada, which is where I got mine, in case you're wondering. I imported it because I'm impatient and I wanted to do a video on it. But pre-orders also went up like late last year from Walmart. Suggested retail price on this is $74.99, so it's a $75 playset. It is supposed to be hitting retail stores, so hopefully you'll be able to find it at places like Walmart and Target. You can also order it at places online like Big Bad Toy Store, Entertainment Earth, so it should be fairly easy to track one of these down and add it to your collection if it's something that you want to do. Brand new Castle Grayskull for the brand new Masters of the Universe toy line. Thank you guys so very much for watching, and until next time.
The Toys of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is available for pre-order now. This official guidebook is published by Dark Horse Books and features over 750 pages of photos and information on your favorite He-Man and She-Ra action figures. And don't miss out on the exclusive bundle pack available for pre-order now from PowerCon. This bundle includes the official guide as well as an exclusive character guide supplement that you won't be able to buy anywhere else. Don't miss out. You have the power.